I will admit that when I first started putting this program together, I did not think of AT&T or communications company as having a role in decarbonization efforts. But then, I started talking to them, and I learned that AT&T is at the forefront of using connectivity to accelerate decarbonization. And since this is our last panel today, or our last presenter today, we thought we'd make it a little bit less formal. So we're just going to try and have a conversation, and hopefully we'll all learn a lot, as we go forward. So let me sit down. Anyway, so Jessica, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and your role at AT&T, and how they play into all of this.
Sure. Well, I'm Jess Filante Farrington. I am the Director of Global Environmental Sustainability at AT&T. And I'll start off by saying I love the work that I get to do. So we're all here because climate change is the most pressing issue of our time. And every day with my team in Dallas, Texas, we get to think about new ways that we can tackle this issue. You mentioned that indeed I am from Dallas, or I am coming in from Dallas, but I'm actually a native New Yorker, so this is home for me. So thank you for the opportunity to reconnect with my family. But I want to talk about quickly the way that we enable you all to connect with your families in the state of New Jersey. So to give you a sense of scale of the investment we've made in our networks in this state, between 2019 and 2021, we've actually invested over $1 billion in our wireline and wireless networks in the state. We cover nearly the entire state with our FirstNet offering, so we make sure that first responders and public safety officials have the connectivity that they need to do the jobs that they need to do. And lastly, when disaster strikes like Hurricane Ian or Hurricane Ida last year, our network recovery vehicles and personnel come in, deploy the equipment to make sure that your service is seamless and to make sure that you can send that critical text message to your family members to say that you're okay. But I know we're at an energy conference, so ask me some questions about climate change.
So when I think AT&T, I think of cell phones, although this is Verizon. So thank you. So why does AT&T care about climate change, and what are you basically doing about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So climate change is impacting all of us, whether you are a company, whether you are a municipality, whether you are an individual. This is something that is facing us all. And AT&T is doing its part to avoid the worst impacts. So this is both a business imperative and a moral imperative for us. Our strategy is three-pronged. So the first thing that we're doing is we've committed to become carbon neutral by 2035 across our global operations. Secondly, and I'll talk a lot about this today, but connectivity is actually a key driver to accelerate decarbonization. And we've committed with our gigaton goal to enable the reduction of a billion metric tons of emissions by 2035. And we're doing that through our connectivity and through helping other businesses operate more efficiently and decarbonize. The third piece, and actually the piece that my team focuses on at AT&T, is climate resilience. So as much as we can all work on our mitigation strategies, we have to be prepared. So my team looks at how do we enhance our network resiliency and make sure that when the next hurricane strikes, we are prepared and our network will operate and be there when you need it most.
So let's take those in order. You mentioned three priorities that you're working on. Decarbonization, connectivity, resiliency. Decarbonization, so how are you? I assume you have a net zero goal by 2050?
By 2035.
By 2035?
Yeah.
Which 12 years from now or less, it's coming up. So what are you doing and how will you get there?
Yeah, so let's first talk about, when we're talking about net zero carbon neutrality, we're talking about our operational footprint. And the biggest source of AT&T's emissions is the electricity that it takes to power our network. So the biggest way and the biggest driver to reduce our emissions is renewable energy. And to give you a sense of our journey there, we went from renewables being 1% of our energy portfolio to now being number 8 on EPA's green power list. We're actually one of the largest purchasers of renewable energy in the United States. And last year, we actually made an announcement about a solar purchase across the river in Pennsylvania, wherever Pennsylvania this way, where we have struck a solar deal that will bring more jobs and also help towards greening the grid. The second piece in tackling our emissions is our fleet. So you may not know this, but AT&T has one of the largest private fleets in the United States. And so all those bucket trucks you see with technicians servicing the lines, all the cars that come out to your homes to service your internet, we have to think about how to transition all of those trucks to become low emissions or no emissions vehicles. So we have a plan in place to do that as well. And then the third piece is good old-fashioned energy efficiency projects that we have been looking at for years to think about how to operate more efficiently. And you asked me before, why does AT&T focus on this issue? Well, another part of energy efficiency is that you can actually save money. So that's another reason we're also interested in that.
So again, all interesting, how you as a corporation are getting toward your net zero goal. But all the corporations, a lot of them are doing that. But really, as a communications company, I'm really more interested in how connectivity plays a role in all of this, because that's really why you're here today. So explain that. How does that work?
I realize it's not an intuitive link, but when you think about each of your company's operational footprint, it's distributed, right? And you need to understand, as Dr. Joshi talked about, where are your emissions coming from and how do you change internal behaviors to be able to reduce those emissions? So think of our connectivity as those highways that the information travels on for you to be able to make better near real-time decisions and how to operate more effectively. So I'll talk about how we're doing that both internally and then how we're helping to do that externally. So internally at AT&T, we have IoT sensors on all types of equipment because AT&T operates in New Jersey, California, and Europe, et cetera, right? So we have IoT sensors on, let's say, an HVAC unit, right? Now, how do we, using that data that's coming from the HVAC unit, suddenly we can understand, oh, that is actually broken and we need to send a guy out to fix it, make it run more effectively, or maybe it's on when it's 40 degrees out. And so we can save some emissions by, again, having that data in near real time about how, where we're wasting energy, where we don't need to. When we think about bringing this outside of the four walls of AT&T, we have what we call our Connected Climate Initiative, which is a coalition of companies, including AT&T, Microsoft, Siemens, Duke Energy, and these are all companies committed to using connectivity to accelerate decarbonization. And I'll give you a couple of examples of how we've worked with some of these companies to do that. So with Microsoft, we have a connected spaces offering, and that basically takes the HVAC example I provided and brings it to scale. So how can a distributed enterprise be able to track their emissions across all of their buildings and be able to give them that data so that they can make better decisions? Another partner we work with is Siemens. So I know we talked a lot today about EV charging stations. So Siemens has charging stations for both commercial and residential use. We are their connectivity provider that enables them to operate these charging stations, understand, which ones may be broken, process payments, all of that. But at the end of the day, that enables you as the EV driver to reliably come up, charge your car or your truck, and be able to operate reliably. The last example is we think about a manufacturing application. The factories of the future are all going to be hyper-connected, right? There's going to be sensors on boilers and compressors, and you can use that information to detect in real time oh, wait, this product is not being made to the correct specifications. You can stop your factory line and you can make changes in near real time. That in turn eliminates waste and electricity use. So all of these things can help. And part of our goal in coming here today is to partner with organizations like yourself and with the enterprises here to join our Connected Climate Initiative, because the more applications we can find for connectivity to help reduce emissions, the closer we'll get to our gigaton goal.
No, again, and I never took that leap. You always hear smart meters, smart this, and how everything always talks to each other. I never made the next leap that, well, you guys are behind how everyone is really talking to each other.
Yes, we make it smart.
You're the smart and smart. So the third piece, again, for all of us who live in New Jersey, we understand resiliency. We all lived through Superstorm Sandy. We lived through Ida, recently, but Sandy really brought home the need to be resilient, the need that, we can't take things running for granted. So, you obviously have lots of equipment, a lot of infrastructure, so how are you making things more resilient, and what are you doing in New Jersey in particular? Because we care about New Jersey.
Absolutely, as do I. So this is actually the area that my team focuses on, and I'll boil it down to 3 main steps that we took. 1 is getting the right data. 2 is being able to deploy that data and being able to understand on a really, really granular level where we're vulnerable. And 3 is taking steps to address those vulnerabilities. So let me walk you through what I mean by all of that. So on the first piece, getting the right data. So as you indicated, it is not enough to understand where storms occurred in the past. We have to look to the future. We have to be able to see where there's wildfire risk in places where there may have not been before, right? And we also need to understand this not on a regional level, but on a street level, on a neighborhood level. So we commissioned Argonne National Lab, which is part of the Department of Energy, to produce a data set for us that allows us to look forward to 2054 and be able to anticipate basically the storms of the future and their impacts. Now, to break that down, what we've specifically asked them to produce is wildfire risk projections. We've asked them to produce drought projections. We've asked them to produce flooding projections, both inland and coastal, as well as high intensity wind. So then there's the second piece of what do we do with that data? We knew from the get-go that that data could not just live in a spreadsheet. It needed to be on a map. So we overlaid all these different climate hazards onto a map of our critical infrastructure in New Jersey and in all of the 48 contiguous states. What we then did was we were able to see, using what we now call our climate change analysis tool, we were able to see where we are vulnerable. So to give you an example of something you could know based on these maps, you could look at West Hartford and I could look at a neighborhood and I could know that that neighborhood is going to see up to 3 feet of flooding by 2054, or in some places up to 12 feet of flooding. So it's really helpful, and you need this kind of granular data to be able to take steps, because these decisions of how to retrofit your infrastructure, these are expensive. So you need to be surgical and it needs to be accurate, right? So the third piece of this is actually taking steps to enhance your network resiliency. So some things that we've been able to do with our climate data, we've been able to look at where do we need floodgates, for example, in Louisiana. So we have maybe today a 3-foot high floodgate, but maybe we need tomorrow a 6-foot high one. So these kinds of decisions require really, really precise data. In California, we see areas where there wasn't wildfire risk before, but now there is, so we can clear brush, we can fireproof equipment, we can bury aerial cable. All of these things allow us to deliver our connectivity to our customers seamlessly and prepare for the risks of the future. So one thing I'll end with is that we know that climate is an area where you don't compete, you collaborate. So we have made this data public, so anyone can go on our website today and see the climate data that we have and play with it and overlay it on your own GIS mapping systems to understand where you might be vulnerable vulnerable. And we're also working closely to help drive greater utilization of this data. So I encourage you, please come talk to me if you're interested in leveraging this data set. In order for all of us to decarbonize and to better prepare for the storms of the future, we have to collaborate. So thank you for having me here today.
AT&T.com?
Yes, on our corporate social responsibility site, yeah. But I'm just so glad to have the opportunity to chat with you all.
I'm glad you flew in. I'm glad, I had a lot of things I was worried about. Her getting here on time by flying in. I saw you flying in yesterday. No, she's flying in this morning. But it all worked out. So we're glad to have you here. Any closing thoughts or?
Just that I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy this beautiful weather, and I hope you get to play the course. It looks like a good course. But yeah, thank you so much.
Justin, thank you.